So today we have with us Paige, researcher, investigator, and author. Welcome to our show today, Paige. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me, Rashad. It's a pleasure to be here.
So this is going to be a very interesting interview. And I definitely welcome someone like Paige on the show because not only does she have a different outlook, or I guess I should say a totally different avenue of what this show pertains to be about. However, at the same time, she can give us some insight on what it is that she do and how she goes about doing it in a business perspective. So, Katie, if you could, just give us a little background about yourself and how you came about being a researcher.
Well, right. It's an interesting story, like you mentioned. And, like so many of us, we're kind of programmed to do certain things with our lives. We're kind of programmed from elementary school, aren't we? At least back in my day, not to date myself, but, you're expected to, go to school, get a degree, which I did. All these things, got married, had my family, raised children. I have my degree and I have a bachelor's of science in visual communications. So started my own graphic design studio called Design Junkie and worked for Travel Host magazine and a number of different things in graphic design. However, a lot of people don't realize that the amount of work sometimes you put into graphic design doesn't really equal the pay. And I just had so many unusual, unexplained things happened to me throughout my whole life, basically, that I always questioned and wonder about. And so my true passion was kind of in these mysterious realms of the paranormal world and ufology. And that's where my true passion lied. And so it took a lot for me to kind of decide to put down the path that I was expected to go down and to give it all up and do something I truly loved and that my heart was in. And it was a financial risk because you sort of, when you start out doing what you love, sometimes just like musicians and artists and whatnot, we're told you better not do that because it doesn't pay the bills. But that's where the true passion lied. So I took the gamble and started doing what I loved back in around 2010. I joined MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network, in 2012. And I've just been sort of working hard at what I love ever since.
That is awesome. Anytime someone can follow their path and their passion, that is truly a blessing. And I say that because something has to be inside of you, to make you want to follow that. And that is admirable. So MUFON, if I'm saying it correctly, can you tell us a little bit about that? It has UFO in it.
Yeah, it is.
That I know.
Right. It is MUFON. It is the Mutual UFO Network. And MUFON was started back in 1969. And they always like saying, we took over where Project Blue Book ended. So for decades and decades, MUFON has been collecting reports from people who see unusual UAPs, or old-fashioned word, UFOs, in the sky. And I'm Colorado's state director. So every state has a state director, and we hold monthly meetings the second Saturday of every month. You go see MUFON.com. Texas has them as well. They're across the country. And about 90% of the reports that come in, and we averaged 15 to 20 reports per month in the state of Colorado. 90% of the time we can tell you what you're seeing, whether it's Starlink satellite or, bugs and birds and the planet Venus and all those things people normally see. But yeah, it's a really great organization, and we take a scientific lean on what we do. So, we like to look at the nuts and bolts science and research behind it. And with everything that's coming out lately with the congressional hearings, and even Mexico just had a hearing, and that, I mean, back, 10 years ago, I used to tell people what I did and they would kind of look at me sideways, what do you do? But now that's kind of coming around and changing. People are changing their attitudes and going, hey, there are unknown things flying around in our skies, like, of course, the infamous Tic Tac and that with the Nimitz. But so yeah, it's an interesting field. But for me, what got me started, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah.
I have not.
Okay, well, there's a show about it on the History Channel called Hunt for the Skinwalker. And basically, in a nutshell, as far as what they call high strangeness, which is anything from UAP sightings to UFOs, or I mean, to orb sightings, to the paranormal, to mutilations and military involvement, and all these mysterious things happen on this notorious Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. And there's been several books written about it by Hurd, Ph.D., and George Knapp, who's an investigative journalist out of Las Vegas. And when I was a young girl, all these strange things were going on, and we were threatened and warned never to talk about what happened out there. And so 2012, 2013, I purchased a book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, and I started reading about the ranch in my childhood in Colorado. So for over 10 years now, I've been doing a deep dive and an investigation on everything that's been happening out there in Elbert County, Colorado. And, in Colorado Springs, we have the Air Force Academy and NORAD and Scrivener and Camp Carson, and a really heavily militarized area in Colorado Springs with the Air Force. And they were on the ranch. So I do believe there were black access projects doing some maybe not so upfront things, maybe with some MK Ultra mind control and that. So it's been a rabbit hole that I haven't been able to find myself getting out of. And within that process, and I think, in the big scheme of things, no matter what your interests are, no matter what you do, whatever sport you're involved in or hobby that you love, once you start taking the steps towards your passions and goals, it leads you to unexpected places. That's what I have found.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I can attest to that. And as far as just the paranormal, I could only imagine, once you open your eyes, what all you can see.
Yeah, that's something that I've been really looking into more so recently, because with the more you're involved with something, the more experiencers you talk to, or people that experience both paranormal or UAP sightings, it's sort of interesting the commonalities these people share. And something I have noticed, when you open yourself up to whether it's paranormal events or UAP events or a whole host of things, a lot of times these people have near-death experiences or trauma in their backgrounds. And in fact, they tend to disassociate from their bodies like remote viewers do. And I feel like when people, for whatever the reason, detach from their bodies in kind of, it's called, that they tap into something else. And once you're connected and tapped into that, those phenomenon seem to follow you through. It's like a disassociation. And meditation can get you there as well. Deep meditation, those kind of things. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, Rashad, but I don't know if you're a meditator or not, but you can actually remote view or kind of astral travel. And then once you open up to that realm, it's sort of hard to close that door. Of course, you need to be careful with what you're dealing with. You always want to protect yourself with love and light and good intentions. You don't want to invite anything negative into your world. So I always tell people to be careful if they go and experiment with these kind of things.
Right. So is there a study, or I guess I could, a place that one could go into these type of meditations, just to see what the outcome is?
There's just so many different places you can, you just type in a search engine, guided meditations is the keyword I use. Guided meditations. There's so many. Joe Dispenza is an excellent source for that. And he's actually really good. He has a lot of really great meditations on manifesting wealth and money.
Yeah,
and
I'm studying him right now.
Yeah. I like Joe Dispenza, and that's things I work on. Cause like I said, when you give away what's programmed in you to do, and you decide to follow your passions in life, you do take a risk financially. And for me, I'm still working every day to do little things to, pay my bills and that. And it's a catch-22, because when you're working in a field like this, there's those people out there who say, well, if you're selling books and if you're on TV shows and you're doing this and you're doing that, you're just in it for the money. Well, that's not true. And I'd like to dispel that myth right now, because, at some point, when you spend over 10 years of researching and hard work and dedication, you need to share that with others, and you do need to pay your electric bill. I mean, you have to eat. So, it's not like that is my motivating factor. Nobody gets really rich by writing books, for goodness sakes, and surprisingly, being on these TV shows is great. I was casted last year on Beyond Skinwalker. It comes on right after the Skinwalker Ranch. It's called Beyond Skinwalker on History Channel. So that was a really cool experience for me, because it's right there going back to the ranch of my childhood for the first time, and they had cameras rolling, and that was an incredible experience. Also doing some films on the topic, and I did UFO Witness and on Gaia TV with George Knapp, Beyond Belief. So I'm getting these new opportunities to finally come around and share all the research and hard work that I've put into investigating these things. However, I'm still working to do more and more and more. And I think that's the key. Like, you can never just sit back and go, okay, it's all just going to roll out. You have to take the steps to work every day, even if it's just something small, to keep moving forward.
I totally understand. It's almost like I said earlier, being a musician. You may, you may love playing the trombone or the trumpet,
Yeah.
but you have to eat eventually. Although that may be your passion.
Right.
As far as artwork is concerned, I guess I'm trying to make a comparison. So in art, a lot of the times people go on to, there was a great painting and no one respected it at this time and that day and age. But later on, it is the catalyst of the study, whatever they're studying, the artwork or whatever, and it's priceless. Do you think something like that, like you say, 10 years ago, no one was even, bothered, but now you can mention what it is you do for a living and people's ears are open. So do you think that this is something that maybe further on down the line, that's when, like, Katie Paige books are selling off the shelves because she did the work?
Yeah, I absolutely see that. I mean, I'm here talking to you, Rashad. So, and this is a show that doesn't typically talk about the paranormal and UAPs. So, I'm honored to be here. But just like I said, it takes you down unexpected journeys and unexpected paths, and you meet unexpected people. And I learned really early on, like, doing our meetings once a month for the state of Colorado, you never know who's sitting there, and somebody you least expect could have this important role or this important connection that you would have no idea that they even had that. So, it's always important to always be respectful and courteous and kind and open to every person you meet, because you don't know who you're talking to and how they can guide you down the next avenue right just around the corner. And that happened to me in meeting in that book I had mentioned, Hunt for the Skinwalker, when I first learned about the investigation at the Rocky Mountain Ranch. In there, Dr. Sprinkle Ph.D. was one of the original investigators on the property, along with two other PhDs, Peter Van Arsdale and John Durr, one of which was a seismologist out there doing studies. And in my research there, all his 40 plus years work within the field of ufology and past life regression is housed there in Laramie, Wyoming at the Heritage Center. So I went to pull the files and information about the ranch. And what happened to me was I got lost in people's letters that had written to Dr. Sprinkle from all around the world. And I found these letters so intriguing and so fascinating that I spent 3.5 years going back and forth to the archive, pulling people's letters, taking hundreds of photographs of the letters. Then I would go home, read the letters, pull all the bits of information out of there, put them in folders on my laptop. Again, not making a dime doing this, just a passion for me. And then I compiled all of those and put them into a book called Letters of Love and Light, 4 Decades of UFO Encounters, Experiences, and Sightings Shared with Ufologist R. Sprinkle Ph.D. And that book now has led to, meeting a whole host of other people, and it's opened doors and different opportunities. And so, like I said, no matter what your passions are, and even though, this particular book is self-published, I'm working with a publisher now for my next book, which is going to have all my research and investigations for the past 10 years on the ranch. So I'm halfway done with writing that second book. But everything you do, you never know who or where that will take you down the road.
That is a gem for this show. No matter what this show is about or whatever show that you go on, just as far as living life, that is a gem. There's, your passion can take you anywhere.
It's true. And that's what they say, we were lied to as kids, or at least I was. I think a lot of us were like, you can't do A, B, C, and D because it won't take you anywhere. Art is a good example of that. You can't be an artist. There's so many things you can do in art, with music too. You'd be surprised at how many little jingles or pieces of music for podcasts and this and that. You can get your music out there. You can get your art out there in so many different ways. As a graphic artist, I was like, oh, I didn't even think like, oh yeah, we need little maps for, this magazine or travel host, or, places of interest or things you don't even think about. And then, oh, you have so many different opportunities to share those passions. Like for me, was told you can never pay the bills with ABC, or even, different sports. Or you mentioned the trombone. Like if you take the steps, you might be the best trombone player in the world. But if you don't take the steps to do something with that music that you're playing, then, you have to put yourself out there and take the risk.
Definitely. I really like the space that we're living in right now, as far as the internet is concerned, because just as you and I are talking right now, there's something that over the years would have never happened because we just didn't have the connection. And now you can speak with anyone over the world. Your music can go viral over the world. Your artwork, you can sell to people you never thought you would come in contact with.
Oh, that is so true. So true. I just did a couple shows for the UK, Australia. One of my biggest surprises was when I was approached by a Japanese magazine, and there's a seven-page spread of my story from the Colorado ranch with photos and everything, and it's all in Japanese writing. I can't read a word of it. I have no idea what it says, but how cool is that we're able to do that now? It's in the field of ufology or UAP research. It can be both positive and negative. Back before we had the internet, when you went out and investigated a case, you did a lot more legwork, a lot more paperwork, a lot more investigating, face-to-face interviews, go to locations, and that the film, obviously now everything could be photoshopped and faked and CGI'd and everything else. So it makes investigators' job so much harder when we're looking at that. And it is a convenience to have like Heavens Above, which is a website people can go to look at the positions of planets and that. And then we have Heavens Above, we have Weather Underground, so we could check the weather for somebody's first sightings, because wind and weather can play an important role. And then we have satellite databases where we can just track, Starlink satellites and that are invaluable. But at the same time, even though that's all at our fingertips, sometimes we can just say, oh, I'm an investigator or a researcher and I just sit behind my computer screen all day. Well, it's always better to go on site and go face to face with people. So it can be both a pro and a con, like so many things in life.
I agree with that. The internet as a whole, I agree with that.
And we won't even get into gaming. We won't even get there. Although, there are some very successful gamers out there.
Right. So let me ask you this. Space Force that the United States have now, the new military edition, is that based on like maybe some of these studies?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, this kind of started way back in the Reagan years, with the Star Wars initiative and all that. And out there in Buckley, Colorado, Buckley has now turned into Space Force. Out here in Colorado Springs, we have the Space Force headquarters. And I think it's really, space is the next frontier as far as, who owns the moon, for example. is China owning the moon now? Who's gonna own the skies, and just like our oceans and our waters? So I think we put that into place to carve out our piece of the sky, this piece of the universe. I don't know how all that works, but I know that's why it's there. And we have so many hidden, like I said, black access projects and technologies. And with people I've run into high ups at General Electric, a lot of these there's been hearings coming out lately that we have indeed back engineered downed craft and for back engineered technology. And so many of these things are contracted out to, Lockheed Martin and Northern Grumman and General Electric, and that because we can't send FOIA requests to these companies to get the information like we can our military. We can always send FOIA requests to the government and the military, but we can't FOIA Lockheed Martin, and they're the ones that are holding these technologies and secrets. And I hear from whistleblowers that we're at least 40 years more advanced in technologies that most common people are privy to. And in fact, if we had Tesla technologies and free energy, we wouldn't have to be paying our electric bills and our gas bills. We have the technology not to do that. But unfortunately, that kind of controls us all and rules us all. So
the big C word is capitalism.
That's correct.
so unfortunately, we all have to pay for it. The free stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. So how do no one can? Well, let me. I'll give a scenario. So let's just say I'm out one day and I see what I believe to be UFO, unidentified flying object, and I want to tell someone. Is there a process, or because you are a researcher independently, is there would I get my information to MUFON? Would I try to Google Katie Paige to find out what it is? Maybe
you can go to MUFON, MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. So MUFON.com. And right up there in the upper right-hand corner, it's report a UFO. And a page will come up that'll say, have you seen this? And it's the Starlink train. Because I don't know if you've seen the Starlink train, but it's a cool sight to see. I just got to get the lead out at Red Rocks here in Colorado, and Starlink came right over the concert, and it was like 35 satellites in a straight line going right over. It's really a cool sight to see. But so many people report that as UAPs or UFOs. Like, we're like, nope, don't report it if you saw this, because we know what it is. But yeah, you can go to MUFON.com, report your sighting, and then what will happen, it will be assigned to your state where you had your sighting. And that's good to know, because sometimes people have sightings in airplanes when they're flying across the country. So if you can estimate what state you're flying over at the time, even if you just give the flight number and your destination, the time of the sighting, we can kind of triangulate where you were, and that sighting will go to the state of the sighting. And then your state director will assign it to a field investigator in that state. And they'll typically send you an email, and I'm the field investigator that was assigned your case. We have 90 days to complete your case. So again, we look at things like heavens above, stellarium, and the weather data, and we'll just take basic information. And what a field investigator does is they rule out all the known things that it can be. We have photo experts that will do photo forensics and video forensics, so they could tell you if some people will send in, like, I didn't notice this at the time, but when I got my picture developed, I saw this blue orb. Well, could be a light refraction from the camera. Or I saw this object, I wasn't sure, and you zoom in and you can see the wings flapping of a bird, kind of thing. So, most of the time people are pretty good about finding out that what they thought was a UFO was in fact a bird or a bug. Other times, not so much. People are looking to see a UFO, and they're active, like, I really wanted it to be this, and they're a little disappointed. But 95% of the time people are pretty awesome with it. So that's how you do it. You just send it to MUFON.com. It's also important to know that all of our field investigators are volunteers. So again, they're out there just living their passion, doing what they're interested in. And it actually is good because it makes them really work hard at what they're doing and that. So yeah.
Not looking for a reward. Like, yes, that's exactly what you seen. So you have a book out.
I do.
Do you do speaking engagements or appearances?
I do. It's so funny. I started out as a pretty shy person, and then somewhere along the line, I found my voice, and now you can't shut me up. But yeah, I love going to these UFO. There's the big one, Contact in the Desert in California. I just recently spoke at. There's just so many across the country. Been to New York, Pine Bush, and to Oregon. And next year's big MUFON symposium will be out there in Texas. So they'll have information about that. And I don't know, probably 4 months on their website, MUFON.com. So there's their big symposium. And those events are great. I love speaking to share what I've learned. And I also love learning from everybody else. There's just so much to learn from so many experts, and Contact in the Desert is really into into the AI technology and getting PhDs out there. So it's not all just UFOs and kind of people think tinfoil hats. It's hardcore science and research and investigating and what's going on currently in the field. So it's really a fascinating time right now.
Yeah, I can see how that all ties in. Just hearing you speak, I think this would make an excellent TEDx talk.
Right.
Definitely. So, sure. Where could people that's interested in and want to hear more from you, social media handles, websites, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can find me at Katie, Katie, Paige, Paige.net. And I have my website there, and I have an appearances page. So I'll be flying to Virginia shortly to do Mysteries of Space and Sky. That'll be a great event. And yeah, there's just everything that's going on, a bit about my research and what I do. You can follow me there, and updates on the book and different shows and TV shows and whatnot. And, like I said, no matter what your interests, if you get up every day, and I'm big on lists, I'm one of those people, old fashioned. I don't even like necessarily making lists on phones or I like it all on old fashioned paper and pen. And if you can just jot down 1, 2, or 3 goals every day to work towards whatever your passion may be, it's very helpful. And like I said, one rule I made for myself early on when I first started this journey in ufology was whoever knocks on the door, at least crack the door open and see who's behind it. Doesn't mean you always have to agree and say yes, but I have found the more yeses that I do, the more chances and risks I take, even though I'm really afraid. I just go do it. And I have a good example of that. A few months ago, I had just done the show, and I was getting more and more invites to different things. So I got an invite to an event in downtown Denver. I really wasn't sure what it was, but again, per my rule, I'm just like, yes, I will be there. I had the date open. I will be there. I'm not sure what it is. And it was on a weekend. I show up, I walked in the door, I'm chit-chatting to the nice folks that were in the studio, and in walks a gentleman, and he looked kind of familiar to me. I'm like, I've seen this person before. I'm like, hey, you look familiar. And he goes, yeah, I've been in a few movies. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. And I start, talking to these other people, and I come to find out I was being interviewed by Giamatti and Paul Giamatti. And and it was so funny because it was supposed to be an hour-long interview, which was one show. It turned out to be 2 shows on Paul Giamatti's show called CHINWAG. And because we just couldn't stop talking about all these things. He has a huge interest in all these topics. And even after the interview, I drove all the way from Denver home to Colorado Springs, and I looked up who Paul Giamatti was, and my jaw just dropped to the floor. I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen him in so many. Had I known who it was, I probably would have been so much more nervous than I was. Right. But since I had no idea, I was just like, blah, 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 blah. So that was kind of fun. So like I said, those yeses, you never know they'll lead in on your path and your journey, so it's so important to do that, to take the risk.
That is an amazing piece of advice. And that's why when you first got on the show today, and was like, I don't know what's going on. I'm paranormal. This is a money-making show. Me, myself, I'm like, if a person can see it, visualize it, and go through with it, those are the people I want to speak. Because, I mean, in my eyes, those are the people that make things happen.
Yeah, no, you bring up such a great point, and and I've been doing a little trying to manifest and visualizing. I think first of all, it's so important to have a clear idea, number one, of who you are and what you want, how you visualize how you want your life to be. I mean, for some people, certain things are really important and they value certain things, and for others, not so much. So you need to know what you value. For me, it's being in the Rocky Mountains next to the birds and nature and having a more quiet, subdued, peaceful life. I'm not one who needs a lot of flash and glamour and all that, but some people love that. So you really need to know who you are to begin with. And you need to live your life every day as though you have everything you've ever dreamed of. Live your life as if you have it already. And I can remember as a young girl, my mom she was a computer operator for United Airlines, and they had a mainliner club, and they would put on events every year, fashion shows or whatever. And they had the big drawings where you'd put your tickets in. And for some reason, I just expected to win. I'm like, I'm going to win a door prize. I'm going to win a door prize. I just expected it. And sure enough, 9 times out of 10, I'd win because I was expecting to win. And this kind of goes hand in hand with now, like you have to expect it, visualize it, want it, see it, and then take the action every day, even if it's just 1 or 2 little things to make it happen. You just can't sit back. And I watched that show years ago. What was it? The Secret. Have you seen The Secret?
Yes.
Right. And there was a part of that movie in The Secret where a kid wanted a bicycle, and the next day the bike just magically showed up on his doorstep. And I'm like, okay, I do think reality is not as what we all think it is, but I don't think if I go to bed tonight wanting my brand new Jeep, it's going to be there in the morning. Like I'm just not thinking it works that way. So I was a little confused by that. But then finally I started to understand, like you have to live as if that bike is already there or that Jeep is already there, and then take those active steps. You can't just sit on the couch and open the door and bam, it's going to be there.
Right.
So and I took that to heart. I'm like, okay. And there's days, like everybody else, where you don't have so much energy, or you're having a bad day, or something happens within ufology or something. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so frustrating and hard. And on those days, you just be nice to yourself, revisit why you're interested in the first place, and refocus, and then get up and start all over again.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Center yourself. That's what I hear a lot of. You center yourself, meditate, and once you come back to the center, you can start back from there. That way you never lose any progress. You just keep going.
Yeah. And journaling is good too. And it's so funny because I, recently moved in the last year. And so I had boxes of things that I moved. And I tend to will buy journals and things and start writing for a few weeks and then stop writing for like a year and then start again, stop. And it's so funny because the things I have written about for years on end, it came to me like a bolt of lightning that I was talking to myself in negative ways. In other words, I want to lose the weight, and then I'd list a whole host of negative things. Where now I've found and I say, I am healthy, I am strong, I feel better than ever. I don't dwell on the negatives. I think it's so important to focus on the positives, focused as if you already have ABCD, or you have that dream body, or you have that love interest you're looking for, or you have that dream job. Pretend as if you already have it, and don't do the beating yourself up game, which I've done for decades before. You just have to, and it's hard to stop that. It's hard to stop that little voice inside your head that's always negative, always tearing you down.
Right. Well, you mentioned someone earlier, author, Joe Diaspora.
Uh-huh.
I started reading his book. Anyone that's listening to this, if you pick this book up, it's called Changing the Habit of Being Yourself.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Okay, I want to say that's the title. The book is basically just spoken on everything that you're just saying, and it's starting from a blank slate, like really changing the habits. And I would have to say, as far as reaching a paranormal, digging down into a meditation so deep, I almost had to stop reading that book because you can literally feel yourself changing. Like you can literally feel it once you start kind of getting into your mind, getting into the blank slate, erasing it, and then starting it all over. You can definitely feel the change.
That's for sure.
It is. It was a different type of feeling than in it. You know, a lot of times you go on journeys and, you know, whether it be a diet or a workout routine or something of that nature. But when you can really change yourself, there's a way that you can kind of change the way that you think, walk and talk, whatever the case may be. It's you coming out as a whole other person.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to remember that challenges that we face, and, you know, not to get into it on the show or anything, but I've had a lot of trauma in my past and it's really easy to focus and replay those events over and over in our minds. And I just recently watched a show where it talked about who are we really, and we're really just spirit energy. You know, these are just our avatars, our bodies, our avatars, but we're so much more than that. And it's like we're watching our lives unfold on a TV screen. And we do have if one thing the paranormal and ufology has taught me is that this life, this 3D world that we're living in, is so much more than we think it is. I think that we have the power to mold and manifest and change our realities. And perhaps even we're living in sort of a matrix or a video game kind of thing, right? Like the movies, The Matrix. So if you see yourself like observing the screen, like take yourself out of your avatar and observe your life from that different view, as if you're watching your life unfold on a TV screen, you can start changing those negative habits and patterns and rewrite it. You have the ability to rewrite your life any way you choose, even what was in the past. And remember, no matter what awful things you've gone through and what challenges people face, you could come out the other end to use that to help others and to learn and to grow. And I think that's why we are incarnated in these 3D bodies, so we can experience both the highs and the lows, the positive and the negatives. And if you find yourself in a negative, you have to just take those little steps every day to change that around and change the way you talk to yourself and change the way you want to see yourself in the future. Because we do, each of us, nobody has the magic. We all have the magic. We all have the magic to change every single day if we just take those little steps. And sometimes it's more challenging than others, I know, but if you work to do it, you'll eventually get there. And like I said, you just never know where your journey will take you. Like I look back on my over 10 years of being in the field, and when I started, I didn't know anybody in the field, and now I'm like friends with so many of these people. I'll turn on a UFO show and it's like, there's my friend, them and them and them. And then, and no matter what your interests are, you'll find yourself there too, eventually. Cause what you put effort into, you get back. So.
Yeah. Well, you're the expert. You're the expert in the field. Everyone looking at you. Advice. Katie, this was very interesting. It's really a topic that I can go on and on about. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It was a wonderful surprise.
Well, thank you, Rashad, for having me. It was a surprise for me as well. See, there you go. Proof. Answer that door, say yes, and I got to meet an awesome guy like you.
There you go. Just say yes. It all worked out in the end.
Right.
So, thanks a lot. I know the listeners are going to get a ton of knowledge out of this. And what I do, I like to circle back around 6 months or so and see what you're up to further on down the line.
Sounds great to me. I appreciate that. All right.
Okay, well, stay warm and look like you are.
I am. Got my little fire in the background.
All right. You have a great night.
Thank you. You too.